assassin, fighter, mage, marksman, support, and tank. And the 7th undefined role is jungler, which I will discuss later in the video. Assassins are champions that deal tons of damage, they are extremely mobile, and have weak defenses. As the role implies, the purpose of an assassin is to kill another champion. Their primary focus will be the mage, marksman, or enemy assassin. Their secondary targets are supports and fighters. They typically should not aim the enemy tank. Assassins deal high amounts of physical or magical damage to their targets. Majority of assassins have the skill sets to get their target and get out. They are opportunists and are not meant for fighting in the front line of your team, but should be able to follow up on initiations, making them the best in the mid line or in the middle of your team. Assassins also tend to have stealth abilities, which make them not visible unless you acquire true vision. Fighters are champions that are in the front lines along with their tank. They deal damage and are able to receive damage. They tend to have an ability to help get them into the fray. Usually they don't have escapes. They also tend to have crowd control, which immobilizes targets or makes them unable to use their abilities. Their main focus is also mages, marksmen, or assassins. They are able to deal a relatively large amount of damage to those champions. They are a problem for most mages and assassins because they are able to soak damage and deal damage. This mitigates their high damaging bursts that those roles have. Enemy fighters, supports, and tanks are not targets that you should be focusing generally unless you need to peel or protect your higher damaging teammates. Mages are champions that deal tons of magical damage, generally to a whole team, and have crowd control abilities. They are generally not mobile and have weak defenses. They rely on their crowd control and spacing to deal damage and stay out of harm's way. They should generally be in the mid line, so they are able to assist their front line and able to follow up on their initiation. As the front line, tanks and fighters, tend to have abilities to crowd control the enemy team and get into the fight. Mages need to be wary of their spacing. They are very dependent on it. Mages' primary focus are assassins, mages, marksmen, and support, unless they need to focus the fighter or tank to peel for their team. Their high magical damage is best utilized on the other roles before they are able to make a move. Marksmen are champions that deal tons of physical damage, generally to a single target. They rely heavily on basic attacks and spacing to do damage. They generally should be in the back line, focusing whatever is closest to them and staying alive, because they deal consistent damage. They tend to be moderately mobile, as they have the tools to kite or attack and space themselves from the enemy. Their primary focus is turrets. They are safe tower pushers as they attack from a distance. Marksmen should focus on other targets besides the tank, but it is not wrong for them to focus on the tank. Their goal is to deal constant damage and remain safe, attacking whatever is closest to them. The later the game goes on, the stronger they become when you buy items. They, by the end of the game, are able to attack any target and deal tons of damage. Because of this, they are easily killable, but if their team helps in protecting them and they remain in the back and space properly, they are able to end the game. This role is the most common because of how important they are to taking out towers. Supports are champions that give utility to a team, protecting them with shields, buffing them with auras, providing crowd control, and sustaining their teammates with heals. They tend to deal little amounts of damage, they're not too mobile, and have weak defenses. Despite this, their crowd control and ability to make their teammates stronger make them very useful. There is not enough gold income in the game for everyone, and supports are able to operate on a low gold income because of their utility that they provide. They also tend to be champions that purchase the most wards, again because they can operate on a lower gold income. Their primary focus is protecting the allied marksman and mage. Supports can initiate fights, but it's generally better to protect their teammates. That is why they stay in the back line with the marksman. Tanks are champions that deal minimal damage, but have amazing crowd control and defenses. These champions are meant to be in the front line, soaking up damage from the enemy team and disabling them for your teammates. Their main focus are the champions with weaker defenses, disabling them for your team, and generally the fighter or mage should follow up with you. Tanks are able to operate on less gold income than other champions as well, but they still require it compared to the supports. Tanks protect their team and should initiate fights according to the situation. Jungler is an undefined role because they are champions that are utilized differently than champions who are laning. Junglers are champions that level up and earn gold inside the jungle, that is in between the lanes. Their focus is to seize secondary objectives, the red and blue buff, Dragon, and Baron Nashor. This role is only utilized in 2 game modes as well, so they don't transition into the other game modes. Finally, it's very champion specific, not role specific. All the roles listed before are able to jungle, but it's very dependent on the champion who's a part of that role, not the role itself, which is why it's not defined, but it is very important to competitive play. Allied junglers gank or ambush the enemy you are fighting against. Visualize it like this. You are fighting top lane versus the enemy top laner. It is 1 versus 1, but then your allied jungler comes in and ambushes them after farming their jungle. The situation turns into a 2 versus 1 situation, giving you an extreme advantage in winning the fight. If successful, you earn gold from the kill and are able to destroy the tower to earn even more gold. Their role is important on Summoner's Rift and Twisted Tree Line, despite the role not being defined officially. I'll be going into this role in depth in another video. So let's recap. Fighters and tanks should be your front line. They initiate fights and take the most damage. Mages and assassins should be your mid line. They follow up on initiations looking for the right opportunity. Marksmen and support should be your back line. They remain safe and space the enemy team. Assassins deal tons of damage. They're very mobile. They have weak defenses and they tend to have stealth. They focus on enemy assassins, mages, and marksmen. Fighters deal damage, receive damage, and they initiate. They focus on initiations and assassins, mages, and marksmen. Mages deal tons of magical damage, they have weak defenses, and are not very mobile. They focus on assassins, mages, marksmen, and support when able to. Marksmen deal tons of physical damage. They have weak defenses and they're kind of mobile. They focus on towers and the closest target to you. Supports have utility, no damage or defense, crowd control, and they focus on protecting mages and marksmen. Tanks have high defense, low damage, initiation, and crowd control. Their focus is on initiations and soaking up damage from the enemy team. And finally, Jungler, the role that can be filled by other roles and is used for advantages against the enemy and securing secondary objectives. Dependent on what role you are is dependent on where you should be positioned during team sieges or